Hi, in this video we are going to go over the Notan Japanese art project or challenge that you guys have. And for this activity, you're going to need your square color construction paper and a black square construction paper. So referring back to the activity that you guys had done previously, exploring positive and negative space, where you cut out half a shape and then flipped it onto this side. It's the same exact concept, except for instead of having one edge now, you have four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Just like that. Okay, so to begin with, the first thing you want to do is kind of place your square in the middle, the center that you think it is the best place. Holding it down with one hand, I'm going to lightly draw around it with my pencil. This is going to help me from having to guess where the middle is or where it should be placed each time I go to move it back there, okay? So do not press hard on this because you're going to have to erase these lines eventually. We just want it to be kind of noted where the middle is so you don't have to guess every time you go to place it back there, all right? The next step of the project is to, on the right side, it doesn't really matter what side you start with, I'm just starting over here. You're going to draw half a shape there, just like you did in the first activity, okay? So keep your shape simple. It can be a geometric shape, or it could be an organic shape that you kind of make up. It is up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a heart to begin with, or half a heart rather. So I'm going to come up, over, and then down. Notice that I drew my shape so that it was large enough that it wasn't just this super tiny one little mark in the middle. However, I made really sure not to cross a corner here or here, okay? It has to stay along the edge, but can't cross the corner. An example of crossing the corner is if I would have made my heart come out all the way here, and then it would have ended on a different edge. It has to stay on the same edge, and it can't go past the corner, okay? So now that I have my shape drawn here, and I'm going to just adjust it a little bit, I'm going to cut it out with my scissors, just trying to stay in the line. Wonderful. Now that I have it cut out, I'm going to look and refer back to my square that I draw on my paper, put my black paper right back on there so that it's lined up. And then the piece that I cut out, I'm going to kind of, I always tell students to kind of put it back like a puzzle piece and then flip it along the line. That way you kind of know which way it's supposed to go. So it goes right there, and as you're lining it up, you need to make sure to line it up right along that line, even maybe just right on that line that you drew when you first drew around your square. So in order to not lose this piece, I'm going to tell you to glue it down. Now, this is just scrap paper that I have and that you guys should have too to do the gluing so it doesn't get on your artwork so that we can keep it nice and clean. This is the side of my heart that needs to be up, so I'm going to flip it back in like it was going back into my puzzle, and then kind of put it over here. That way I know this is the side that needs to put the glue on. So because I have the scrap paper here, I don't have to be too careful about my edges, and I get a nice whole glue all around it. So I'm going to move my scrap paper. I'm going to make sure that my square is lined up. Lining up your stuff is really important in this project, okay? So right along this pencil line, I'm going to make sure, and see my square moved a little bit down here. I can see my trace, so I'm just going to check it. This is the important part of lining everything up. I'm not going to place it up here. There should be no gaps. It just should honestly look like it flipped out. So I matched up my bottom first. I'm going to hold it there to keep it in place and then move my top up so it lines up right on that line as well as I can, and then press down. Great. So that is one side. Now I need to move on to my next side, which is just down here. So thinking of another shape that I can draw. This time I'm going to draw a geometric kind of just burst. So up. So I do like how this kind of came down. I want this side to match a little bit. So I'm going to adjust my shape. Again, if you draw lightly, it's pretty simple to erase, and you're going to kind of clean up this shape at the end anyway, so you want to make sure that you are drawing lightly with your pencil so that it's not super messy when you go to erase those marks at the end. Oops, I think I'm just going to adjust this. There. All right, so now that I have my shape down, I'm going to lift up my square again. My heart's already glued down. I'm going to carefully take my scissors and cut along my line. Again, before I cut, I should also mention, did not cross over this corner and did not cross over this corner. You have to stay along the edge. If you cross the corner, this is not going to turn out the way it's supposed to. Okay, now I have my piece cut out. I'm going to put it down here. Next, I'm going to line my square back up, like so, and then place my piece back in like it were a puzzle. And remember, I know that I need to, now look, it wasn't really lined up, it's kind of turned, and you can see that because there's a gap here in my heart. So lining it up, again, is very important. So now that because your heart's already glued down. If you mess up the alignment after you glue pieces down, the only thing you can do is rip them up, which will rip your paper, and you want to try and keep it real nice and clean. Okay, so that's in the right spot. This is right here. I'm going to flip it out, so now it goes right down this way. Sometimes I have students who don't do this part where you're filling it back in. The downside of that is you can get confused, and then you might flip it, but if you look at this real closely, you'll notice that it doesn't match up. The shapes are different. If I were to flip this back in, it would be off. It wouldn't actually fit in perfectly like it's supposed to. So this part of kind of like really matching it back up is important so that you know that you're lining it and flipping it the right way that it's supposed to go. Okay, so now that that's like that, I'm going to get my scrap glue sheet out. This side's supposed to be up, so now I'm going to flip it back so that I know that this side is supposed to be the side that's glued. So now that it's glued, I'm going to take this. Before I glue it down again, double, triple check your alignment of your square. See how it matches up with your heart that you've already glued down, or your shape that you glued down. I'm looking at my heart. Okay. Now I'm going to put it real close here on the one end to match it, and then take this end and match it. It helps if you match one corner first and then hold it down so then you can adjust the other side. Good, and then just smooth it out. Awesome. So now we've done two sides. We have two sides left. So on this side here, I need to draw a different shape. Again, you can make it geometric or more organic. I'm going to do a blob, kind of an organic shape. And just filling in down here, it's a nice way to kind of fill in the space so there isn't one big chunk there. But again, not crossing my corners, okay? So I'm going to take my scissors and carefully cut this out. Here we go, I have it all cut out and nice. So again, lining up my square so that my pieces are lined up. And it is hard because it does move a little bit. So once I've lined it up with the lines that I've drawn, I'm also then double checking where my lines are glued already, because that's important. Sometimes notice how up here it's moved a bit and it hasn't really matched up with my line that I drew, but it matches up really well with where I've glued my shapes. So I'm going to go based off of where I've glued my shapes because I'm not ripping those back up. Okay. So this goes in here, and then I'm going to flip it out like so, and then it would go on this side just like that. So now that I know that, I have that, I'm kind of holding everything down, moving it over, getting my scrap paper to glue. This side has to be up, so I'm flipping it back in because now I know this side has to be glued. So putting it on here, Putting my gluey glues on. Holding it up. Before I take it, I'm again looking at my alignment of everything. Make sure that it's lined up the way I want it to be. Good. This is all looking good, so I'm going to hold this down and then move this hand over so that it's closer and can hold my paper down so it doesn't move. Oop. Taking the one side or one corner and lining it up really well with that corner up there, and then holding it in place. Ooh, feels like Twister, moving my hands back and forth. This side down here, if you can see, is not lined up, so I'm going to make sure that I move it over a little bit so that it falls in line, so it looks like it's right along that edge. Good. And then I had a little bit of glue in my hand. This is, you really want to make sure that your hands are clean as you're moving on things, so wipe them on your scrap paper and stuff to try and keep your artwork here as nice as possible. So now that I have a nice solid attached here, I'm going to smooth out the rest of my piece. And that little glue that I had, it kind of just rolled off. I was really gently just rubbing it so it fell off. Very good, very good. All right, I have my 3 edges done. I just have one more at the top here for the last edge. So again, you could do something geometric or something more organic. I don't have too much room to work with, so I'm going to just probably do another organic shape because they're kind of easy to move in and out of these weird spaces. So there, I drew that. I'm gonna pull it up and take it with my scissors. Okay, here's my last piece. Now I have this left of my square that I started with. I'm going to line it back up, starting with my heart here to make sure it's in the right spot before I attempt to glue down that last piece I had. This is, and it gets a little bit flimsier because you are cutting more away from it. So that looks good. This kind of looks good. If you notice over here, it's a little bit off. So I'm going to move it just a smidge. That looks way better. Because this black square, or what's left of it, isn't glued down yet, this looks off, but once you smooth it down and hold it down to where it would be, they line up perfect, okay? So just be mindful of that. Like, it looks like it's off, but once you like flatten it and it's down, it lines up pretty well. And all my shapes here look like they're in a good spot. So that's a good spot for me to be putting the piece that I cut out back in and then flipping it up. That's where it's supposed to be. Flipping it back down so that I know this is the side that's glued. I'm kind of really liking where my pieces are, so I'm kind of holding it down still and trying to glue this at the same time by putting it on top and holding it down so that my stuff doesn't move underneath. Putting a good amount of glue on, holding this down, pulling this up so I can hold this back down. Now, I think I've held it down pretty well, but again, before I glue anything, I'm just going to double check where everything is lined up. Yep. Take my piece, flip it over, line up this first as close as possible. Oh no, see, and that happens too. So I'm going to hold that there and just leave it and then fix my square that moved when I hold up. Okay, so my heart is lined up really well. Checking my other shapes to make sure that they're lined up just as well. That's good. When I flatten that out, that's good. This is good. Okay, so I'm going to hold this down here and then make sure that this corner lines up as well. Whew, that was close. Good. Smoothing out my shape. I have all my edges flipped out and they're all down. So the last part for me for this Notan Japanese challenge is to glue down the center. Now you'll notice that because I drew on this side, I still have pencil marks. So that's where I'm going to take my eraser. And because I drew lightly, I'm just going to nicely, maybe not on my nice paper, but off of it, clean up those pencil marks. And it is flimsier because you have cut out a lot. So be mindful of that when you're erasing, not to push really hard, or at least to hold it down while you're erasing so that you don't rip your paper by just kind of attacking it with the eraser. So all around these edges where there's pencil marks left, just taking my eraser. Oops, see, gotta be careful. I don't want anything to rip. If something were to rip, it's not the end of the world. We can obviously glue it together. All right, a few more. Craftsmanship is really big on this project because you need things to line up perfectly. You need to kind of keep your hands clean from all that glue. And now just putting the final touches on erasing those old pencil lines. So if you can see, I've done a pretty good job. I'm going to glue it down. If there's more, I can get them after I'm done gluing. I'm going to kind of brush away the little eraser flyaways. Clean off my paper here. So this all lines up perfectly like that. So what that means is this side is facing up, and I need to take this middle and then flip it over on my scrap paper so that I can glue the back. And I'm going to take my glue stick, and I love this little scrap paper here because I don't have to worry about getting my hands so gluey and gross because I'm just gluing right to the edges, and this paper is picking up all the extra stuff for me. So this little scrap paper comes in handy a lot. All right, good. It's kind of stuck to me. Now that I got a good amount of glue on the back for it to stick, I'm going to carefully detach that. Going right back to where I've started this entire time with my heart, because that was the first one I cut out. I'm going to line up the one edge, and then because I'm kind of in this corner already, I'm going to line up the next one right here, so that's good. And then slowly walk my finger up, tapping it down. Before I get too close to the middle, I'm going to line up the top edge of the heart. And this is tricky because it's really thin. So, and then push down a little bit once I think I got it in the right spot. Now this is kind of a gap here. So I know that I need to pull this up a little bit to match with that. And then because it's still movable, it still is easy to adjust it just a little bit. So that kind of lined up really well. This little heart piece, because it's so little, can be kind of manipulated right there. Okay, good. So those two corners are good. I'm slowly walking my fingers in. I had a little bubble here. I'm going to see if that can be smoothed out a little bit. Good. So now I got those corners done. I'm not rushing this because I don't want to smudge my paper or crinkle it or rip it. I'm lining up this corner here, and then I'm walking my hand or coming over here to take a look at this one. It's kind of on top of my paper. Oops, see, it moved. I'm going to turn it so I can get a better glimpse of it. Maybe if I line this up first. Oh, yep, see, that worked. And then I'm just going to adjust that. So don't be afraid to like twist your paper a little bit. I lined that up and then I pulled this one back, and it lines up really well. It does create this little ripple here, but again, I'm just going to walk and smooth my finger up towards the middle and smooth them out, okay? There is kind of a pucker here. Again, just trying to smooth it out carefully. And then my last corner here, it's kind of already lined up, but you do see the gap right here. And so again, I'm just going to take and pull it over a little bit. You are in charge of the paper. You want this to try and line up as best you can. So again, just careful not to tear anything, just moving it gently, and it will move. Pushing it over. I feel like I can get it a little bit closer, so I'm going to peel it up just a little bit. And there. And look, it looks perfect there. Oh, good. So taking my time, I lined up my corner, took my finger and went up a little bit to smooth it out before getting all the way to the middle. Then I moved up to the next little intersections to line up these. You may have to pull your paper and twist a little bit to get it to line up well, and then slowly pushed it down. I did that for each little intersection. This is coming up a little bit, so I'm going to take my glue stick and just smudge it on a little bit and lay it back down. And then smoothing out all the different things. So if I have any lines left on my color paper from when I initially drew my square. I'm just going to take my eraser and carefully go over them and erase them because I drew it really lightly. They really easily just kind of fade away. If I notice any more little marks on the middle here where I had drawn it, I'll take my eraser and erase those as well. So this is your Japanese Notan Square Challenge. So once you completed it, it looks amazing. It's pretty cool, and it's another study of positive and negative space. You should be very proud of yourself. Take your time, go slow. Remember, you started here with just one paper and flipping one shape, and then now you graduated to 4 sides in a square. Something very cool. I can't wait to see what your guys' look like.